Obama. Gore is vigorously for a carbon tax against this cap-and-trade manipulation. Is he going to pull Obama toward a carbon tax, or is he going to say, oh, Obama is not as bad as McCain. We got to support Obama critically. The corporations are pulling Obama every day, 24/7 in their direction. If all these liberal groups with all their single issues are not pulling in the other direction, where do you think the Democratic Party and the nominee is going to go? Even if they're elected, they won't have any mandate. And we have to become very rigorous here, and I hope Matthew Rothschild writes another editorial that reflects his intellect rather than his desperation.
Ralph Nader, you said in 2000 it doesn't really matter whether Gore or Bush is president. Do you feel that way today?
I didn't say that. I said the similarities between Bush and Gore tower over the dwindling real differences that they're willing to argue over. And, of course, my focus is not on some of the single issues. Obviously, Gore is better on Social Security, better on Medicare, better on gay, lesbian rights. Obviously, in those areas, the Democrats have a much clearer position, better position than the corporate Republicans. But in the gross area of corporate power and domination of every agency and department in our government, from the Department of Defense to Department of Labor, the Democrats are moving in the direction of the Republicans. It's quite clear in terms of their voting record. There are exceptions like Henry Waxman and Ted Kennedy, Ed Markey, but for the most part, these parties have moved very heavily into the grip, the iron grip of corporate power, corporate money, corporate ultimatums on globalization, for example, and above all, the distortion of the federal budget in the direction of corporate contracts, subsidies, handouts, giveaways, and the swelling of this enormous, corrupt, wasteful military
Ralph
budget.
Nader, let me ask you a question. For those who want to vote for Barack Obama, but are very discouraged about the lack of a strong stance that he has taken, or laying out his position, for example, on withdrawal from Iraq. What do you think they should do?
Just what votepact.org. They get together with a disenchanted Republican. So you have a disenchanted Democrat who feels he has to vote, or she has to vote for the Democrats because they don't want Republicans. You get a disenchanted Republican friend or neighbor who feels that they have to vote for Republicans, they don't want to vote for the Democrats. And they both say they're going to vote for Nader Gonzalez. There is a self-initiating process here that's personal and political that people can do all over the country. Nobody can stop them. And we all know that every day at work, in neighborhoods, and at play, the Republicans and Democrats, disenchanted with their parties, are meeting, and all they have to do, and they can actually vote absentee over, while they're having coffee. They can fill out the absentee so they can see that they're being valid in their promises, and vote for Nader Gonzalez.
Your assessment of McCain and Obama's plan to combat the global food crisis, and what is yours?
Well, I would stop subsidizing corn ethanol, for one, which takes away millions of acres from wheat and barley and other edibles, soy. Obama is for subsidizing corn ethanol. Actually, McCain was fairly critical. I don't know what his latest position is. Number two, we've got to straighten out our food export situation. We import far too much food from China, which is contaminated. We've got to have much more food grown close to markets. For example, Massachusetts used to grow 80% of its tomatoes in 1948. Now it imports 80% of its tomatoes from California, Mexico. There's no reason for that. There's plenty of land for vegetable growing, fruit growing near the metropolitan markets. And above all, we've got to have a foreign policy that makes us into a humanitarian superpower. That is, more agricultural cooperatives overseas, showing with our technology, appropriate technology, how to greatly increase crops and preservation of crops. 30% of food grown in the third world is lost due to rodents, fungus, and insects. And we have a lot of knowledge on how to store food and preserve it so it isn't lost, and so people don't starve and children don't have distended bellies because of gross undernourishment.
The
it's
Iraq
an absolute
War.
crime against humanity.
Your assessment of the Iraq War, from McCain's comment, will be there for 100 years, Barack Obama not clear exactly how withdrawal would happen, and what would you do?
6-month corporate and military withdrawal from Iraq, during which we negotiate with the Kurds, Shiites, and Sunnis for modest autonomy, which they worked out in the 1950s before the dictators took over, under a unified Iraq, continue humanitarian aid, some peacekeepers from nearby Islamic countries, and UN-sponsored elections. That's the way you knock the bottom out of the insurgency. That's the way you get the authority figures, the tribal leaders and the religious leaders and others who still have authority over millions of Iraqis to get together, because the alternative is constant bloodshed and civil strife. So you give them a stake by using the only chip we have, which is to give back Iraq to the Iraqis, including their oil. Now otherwise, it's constant strife. You saw that huge explosion in Iraq, in Baghdad yesterday. You know, the Pentagon doesn't count Iraqi civilian tolls. They don't even count officially U.S. injuries unless they occur right in the middle of combat. So U.S. injuries are triple what their official figure is, and all the press, including the liberal press and the indie press, still uses that figure of some 32,000 injured soldiers when it's triple that. I don't understand why they follow that kind of Pentagon line.
Ralph Nader,
that's the way to deal with it.
The issue of global warming.
Global warming, solar power. Solar power is the closest thing to a universal solvent that we have. Wind power, solar, thermal, solar photovoltaic, passive solar architecture, other forms, biofuels that are not corn ethanol. That's the way to go. We've got to have a national mission of converting our economy and be an example for the world in solar energy. It's 4 billion years of supply, Amy, and it's decentralized, it's environmentally benign, it makes us energy independent, and it replaces the ExxonMobil and Peabody coal uranium complex. That's what we've got to go for: economic, political, health and safety, environmental reasons.
The meteorologist talking extreme weather, those two words, but not global warming?
Yes, well, you know, the connection will be made more and more between extreme weather that's occurring all over the world, the increase in water vapor, the effect of that. It's amazing how some people who doubt global warming, I guess like Rush Limbaugh, want to wait until the oceans overcome our literal landscapes, and I don't know what more evidence they're going to require. We're having a lot of material on our votenader.org coming up on that subject.
Finally, health care, the difference between you, Obama, and McCain on health care.
As clear as could be. McCain and Obama have these cockamamie schemes that do not replace the health insurance companies. When Medicare came for the elderly in the mid-'60s, Medicare replaced the health insurance companies. We have a pay-or-die situation, which is disgraceful in this country, whether for drugs or for health care. Physicians have their hands tied, nurses have their hands tied. As the California Nurses Association has so trumpeted, and so specifically, a single-payer system, which is full government insurance, with free choice of doctor and hospital, with a reduction of these corporate bureaucratic costs, about $350 billion, with the replacement, because only one single payer, of all these computerized billing frauds and abuses that are now about $220 billion. There are sources for all these figures. All that can be changed by a single payer. 18,000 people, according to the Institute of Medicine and the National Academy of Sciences, Amy, die every year in this country because they cannot afford health insurance. Nobody dies in Canada, Belgium, Germany, France, Italy, the UK, because they can't afford health insurance. This is a disgrace, and we must get rid of this inefficient, swollen, redundant, corrupt, pay-or-die so-called health care system, and focus more on prevention and more on nutrition and more on exercise, but also more on letting doctors be doctors under quality control systems, not have their hands controlled.
Ralph Nader, we're going to have to leave it there. You'll be here in New York tonight, Symphony Space, 7 o'clock, for a rally. We will cover that. Thanks for joining us. Independent presidential candidate, longtime consumer advocate, and corporate critic. This is Democracy Now!, Democracy